Welcome back to the channel. Today we've got our college basketball best bets for Saturday, February 1st. Yes, finally in the month of February, and we got the 100 likes yesterday on our college basketball best bets for Friday, and that means we are going to do 10 best bets for this huge Saturday slate here for college basketball. And before we get into the picks, folks, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more daily college basketball best bets here on the channel. Again, we're doing this every single day until March Madness, and now that we are in February, March is rapidly approaching. We do have some more content planned for you past March Madness, obviously with daily MLB predictions and our best bets, and obviously our NBA predictions continuing then as well. But make sure to stay tuned to the channel, so leave a like and hit that subscribe button down below. It's all I ask you guys to do as you watch these videos. Also, make sure to go check out our NBA predictions. They're going to be posted later today as well. I don't think there's an early game in the NBA today, so I think that video should still be out the normal time at 10 a.m. Yeah, that video will be out in 3 hours if you're watching this when this video is out at 7 a.m. Pacific. Also, make sure to go check out our UFC Fight Night Imava versus Adesanya predictions from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. This card started an hour ago, but of course the main card still to start at 9 a.m. Pacific. Make sure to check out that video out if you are looking to place any bets or, again, are just interested in the UFC. That card is happening as we speak. All right, on to the first of our 10 best bets for college basketball today, and we've been hyping this matchup up for a little bit now. Now, it's not honestly as intriguing now as it once was because, you know, Minnesota is actually kind of competent at basketball now, but I still think it's a great spot. Washington goes on the road to take on the Minnesota Golden Gophers, and I absolutely love Minnesota in this spot. I can't believe I'm saying that. Yes, I actually really like Minnesota here. This is a Golden Gophers team that has won back-to-back home games in Minneapolis, and they've beat back-to-back ranked squads in the 15th ranked Oregon Ducks and the 20th ranked Michigan Wolverines. They beat Oregon by 8 points. They beat Michigan by 3. Guys, there is a very big contrast in playing those teams and then playing the god-awful Washington Huskies on top of that, the Washington Huskies on the road. Now, to start Big Ten play this year, we always kind of thought that Minnesota was going to be the worst team in the conference. I, again, thought Minnesota and DePaul were both potentially going to go winless in their respective conferences, obviously in the Big Ten and the Big East. Obviously, DePaul picked up a victory against Georgetown earlier this year, and Minnesota obviously has now won 3 games in the Big Ten. And if they can win this one, they're going to get out the gutter here in the Big Ten and potentially become eligible to actually play in the Big Ten tournament. So, I mean, that's one hell of a turnaround for the Golden Gophers. For the University of Washington, this team is absolutely god-awful. They've won 1 game in Big Ten play this season, and it's a win over Maryland at home. They have not won in the Big Ten so far in their school's history in basketball on the road. That includes trips to Eugene, trips to Ann Arbor, East Lansing, and UCLA. They have lost every single one of those spots. This team is just completely based around Great Osabor. Osabor is the entire team. There's nothing else that goes on with this basketball team other than Osabor, if I'm being completely honest with you guys. They do have some shooting potential, and a guy in Tyler Harris, he's not horrible. Zoom Diallo, he'll have his nights, same with Makai Mason, but I don't really like anything on this Washington team except for Osabor, who leads them in points, rebounds, assists, and steals. He can get to the line. He can be a good interior presence for this Washington team. That is fair, but he's going to get Dawson Garcia on him. Now, again, Osabor, you know, weight-wise is the bigger guy, but Garcia's going to have 3 inches on him, but he's going to be the taller guy. Garcia, I think, should be able to hold up in this matchup, and I don't think Osabor is going to be able to completely take over this basketball game. Another thing, this one's at 9 a.m. On the West Coast, 12 noon, obviously, or no, Minnesota's Central, I think. Yeah, they are. 11 a.m. In Central Coast time. Still, that's just a difference. UW going over to the Great Lakes region, obviously, and taking on the Golden Gophers. I think Garcia should be able to shut down Great Osabor in this game. And if you're able to shut down Great Osabor, what the hell do you do? And obviously, they can also double with Parker Fox as well, who, you know, plays spotty defense sometimes, but as a whole, Minnesota is just a better basketball team, something I didn't expect to be saying, honestly, much this season. Have we ever picked Minnesota this year? We picked them to beat and cover against Bethune-Cookman, and they did. I think this is the only time we've picked Minnesota this entire season. Everything else has been us fading the Golden Gophers. Well, again, a 3-game winning streak in the Big Ten, wins over Michigan, Iowa, and Oregon. That's going to help. Yes, they are coming off a loss in East Lansing, but I don't know. It's tough for any team right now in the Big Ten to go to East Lansing and win, and I'm including, again, a team like Purdue, who, you know, didn't cover against IU last night, but pulled it out. Shout out to Mike Woodson for another spectacular game-winning call right there. I mean, we're just heaving it, not even setting up for a three-point shot. I don't understand. But I think Minnesota is able to win. They have the better offensive presence, I would say, even though, that was very spotty to start the year. But you get Dawson Garcia, you get Lucy Patterson, Parker Fox, Mike Mitchell. I'm okay here with Minnesota. I'm going to take them to win this basketball game. We're going to take them to cover as well. Personally, I think this line should be 9.5. I don't think, again, whoever made this line hasn't been watching Washington Husky basketball this season. They are much worse on the road than they are at home. They're pretty much a one-man team. When we've seen them go on the road, they lost by 11 to Oregon. They lost by 16 to Michigan. They lost by 34 to Michigan State. UCLA beat them by 11. They have not had a single-digit loss on the road this year, and that even includes their non-conference play. Sure, they only had one non-conference road game, but they go to Reno and lose by 10 points to the Nevada Wolfpack. This team can't play on the road. They can't really play anywhere, but if you want them, I guess they're better at home, but this is the same team that lost in Seattle to Seattle University. This team's screwed. It's all I can say. I know Minnesota hasn't been the best team all year long, but right now they are 10 times the team the University of Washington is. So give me Dawson Garcia and the Minnesota Golden Gophers to win at home and cover the 5.5 points here in Minneapolis against the Washington Huskies. Let's move on now to our next game as we go to a big one here in Chicago, Illinois. It's a 10 a.m. start time. I don't even know what channel this game's on. ESPN isn't listing one, but we've got the Long Island University Sharks and the Chicago State Cougars. Okay, I get it. LIU hasn't been good for us recently. They haven't. They've lost 3 games in a row. They lose at St. Francis, PA. They lose at Mercyhurst. They lose against Central Connecticut. They're not losing at Chicago State. I don't care how bad LIU has been recently. This is a team at one point was undefeated in the NEC. They were 6-0. Yes, they have lost 3 in a row. They are not losing to the god-awful Chicago State Cougars. Now, Chicago State, surprisingly, has 2 victories in the NEC this season. It's a win on the road at Wagner, and it's a win at home against Lemoyne. Great. Lemoyne's 2-5, Wagner's 3-5. Okay, in conference. These two teams have matched up earlier this season. They played on Long Island, and LIU won the game 53-39. Yes, the Cougars scored 39 points in that basketball game. And sure, again, the Sharks only scored 53. But guys, we're not getting, that was a 14-point margin in this game. LIU is favored by 3.5 in this one. We are not getting a 12-point swing just because the game's in Chicago, Illinois. I get it, it's a long trip, New York to Chicago, but come on now, guys. LIU is not that horrible. Sure, again, they've lost 3 in a row, and that's not impressive. Again, St. Francis, PA has not been a great team this season. Mercyhurst has been okay, and Central Connecticut, obviously, right now feels like the favorites to potentially win the NEC. Now, I mean, whoever wins this conference is definitely, going to be playing, I don't know, the winners of the SWAC probably in the first 4 in March in Dayton, Ohio. But I don't think, and by the way, Long Island University, if I could be wrong, I feel like they actually play at a high school gym. Like, I'm not joking. They have bleachers behind the hoops, but they don't come out. So, like, literally, it feels like my local high school gym. It's crazy. LIU's not that bad. They're not going to go on the road and lose to Chicago State. Guys, Chicago State is a 2-20 team this season. They are absolutely abysmal. Their leading scorer is Jalen Forrest, who averages 10.5 points a game. Noble Crawford averages 9. At least the Sharks have guys who can score. We're talking about Malachi Davis, and we're talking about Jamal Fuller. Davis averaging 16.5 a night. Fuller averaging 12, and Terrell Strickland also averaging 9 points. I get it. The Sharks have not been on their A game recently. That's, again, I understand. They would have to be on their F- game to not go to Chicago State and win. I mean, this would be an embarrassing loss for the LIU Sharks if they're not able to go on the road and beat Chicago State. I don't care. Chicago State's won 2 games this year. Again, if LIU is anything that they were 4 games ago, they should be fine. Even if, again, the Sharks play like they did in their last couple spots where they lose by 10 at St. Francis, PA, they go to Mercyhurst. That's honestly not that bad of a loss. It's a double overtime loss at Mercyhurst. It is what it is. Sure, the Central Connecticut loss isn't ideal. I thought they were going to be able to win that game considering they went to Central Connecticut earlier this season and won. In their last game, obviously, they lost by 13 points to Central Connecticut. But I think we're okay here with LIU. The NEC, to me, feels like a super low-scoring conference. Pretty much all the games LIU plays this season are super low-scoring. Like in the Central Connecticut victory when they went on the road was a 54-52 win for the Sharks. But again, they're playing one of the lowest scoring teams, if not probably the lowest scoring team in all of college basketball. That is Chicago State. Guys, I mean, just listen to their recent point totals. The Lemoyne victory, they scored 88, but we'll get that one out the way right now. The Wagner win, they scored 64, 39 in the loss at Long Island University, 52 against Stonehill, 48 against FDU, 73 against Stonehill, and 64 against Central Connecticut. They don't score points. They can't score. They have one guy who's averaging more than 10 points a game. We cannot trust the Chicago Cougars to win anything. I'm surprised by this line. I understand, again, the game is in Chicago. But what type of home court advantage do the Chicago State Cougars really get? Exactly, okay? This team just hosted FDU, who's not on the level of Long Island University, I don't think, and FDU beat them by 10 points. So, again, LIU just needs to cover 4 in this game. Are we really getting a 12-point swing from the last LIU-Chicago State game to this one? I highly doubt it. Give me the Long Island University Sharks to go on the road to Chicago State, win the basketball game, and cover those 3.5 points as well. Let's move on now to our next one as we go to a matchup here between the Campbell Fighting Camels in Bowie's Creek, North Carolina, and the Hofstra Pride. Now, we just did a Campbell game the other night, and it didn't go our way. They got blown out. William & Mary got blown out at Campbell. The least Campbell can do here to make up for that, because they won, I mean, we picked against them, is go out and beat Hofstra. I don't understand this line. I don't think I'm missing anything. This feels to me like the line we got yesterday with the Rider Bronx at home against St. Peter's. I don't get this one. Why are Campbell underdogs here against Hofstra? Campbell's a team that's on a 4-game winning streak. 2 of those games are at home. 2 of those games are at home against Monmouth and William & Mary in their last one. And in between those 2 games, they have a win over Stony Brook and then a win over Hofstra, the same exact team they're taking on today. I don't get it. They beat Hofstra by 2 points in that first matchup. I just don't understand. I do not get it. Campbell looked incredible the other night. Okay, it wasn't a competition. What can I say? I mean, I first checked into the game. I was a little bit late to watch, and I saw it was like a 30-10 margin. Obviously, Campbell was up. Watched a little bit of it, but I had no need to watch the game. I knew it was over. Again, bad play on our end. I apologize. But, a 41-point victory for Campbell in that game. Unbelievable, right? They're on a 4-game winning streak going to this one. They beat Hofstra in their last game. I get it, overtime spot, but they went on the road to Hofstra and won. Now the Pride have to go on the road and play them. A Hofstra team that hasn't been bad this year, right? They're coming off a victory at Elon in their last game, which is nice, I guess, but they're continuing the road trip going to Campbell, a team that's been home. I like the Fighting Camels in the spot. They were shooting lights out in the William & Mary game. That's the best I think Campbell's looked all season long, obviously. I mean, they put up 96 points in that game. They won by 40, and I get it. Honestly, as I've been watching the CAA all year long, this is the most unpredictable conference in all of college basketball. I truly think so. Now, again, I do feel that UNC Wilmington will probably win the entire thing, but UNC Wilmington's a team that lost at Howard earlier in the season. I get it, non-conference game, but they lost at damn Howard, and we'll get to the Howard Bison later today. And then lost at Hofstra as well. The Townsend loss, who cares? But just, I don't know, the CAA is really difficult. UNC Wilmington's looked great recently. We'll see. I still expect them to win the thing. But who knows, man? Who knows? For the Fighting Camels of Campbell, they're led by Colby Duggan, who averages 14 points a night. Jason Sinani is averaging 13. Nolan Dorsey with 9. Taryn Frank with 8. Cam Gregory with 8. But in their last game, it was none of those guys who the other team was scoring. It was 17 out of Caleb Zerline, who's averaging 7.5 for this game. They had a good night on the glass, I believe. It was by Eric Van der Heijen. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. 10 boards, 5 assists in the game for Van der Heijen in that one. But I mean, Campbell should just be able to look to, improve upon that momentum they got going in that win over William & Mary, a team that is better, I think, than Hofstra. I get it, Hofstra's got some huge victories this season. That's very fair. But William & Mary, has been a pretty solid team all year long. Hell, when Hofstra hosted William & Mary, William & Mary beat them by 18 points. So I do think, again, Campbell has taken on a worse team than they took on Thursday. Hofstra has been on the road. They were on the road on Thursday at Elon. Now they got to go straight to North Carolina to take on Campbell. I don't mind the Fighting Camels at all in this spot. They are underdogs, which really surprises me. This is a line that completely just stuck out for me. I was like, I don't know why. I just didn't know why the Camels were dogs in this spot, so we're going to take them. Give me the Campbell Fighting Camels. Try saying that 10 times faster. At home to beat the Hofstra Pride. They are plus 1.5 point underdogs. Just take the money line at minus 105. Give me Campbell at home to beat the Hofstra Pride. Let's move on now to our fourth game of the video, and we go to a rare, and I mean very rare, non-conference game at this point in the season. Your guess is as good as mine. Actually, okay, I don't know Howard basketball like that. This is probably a rivalry, I guess. But maybe it's not. I don't know. Anyways, Howard's hosting Hampton. I just don't know why this game wouldn't be played, months ago. But Howard and Hampton in a non-conference spot at 12 o'clock on ESPN+, obviously from Washington, D.C., and we are going to go with the road team here in the Hampton Pirates. Now, I get it. Hampton hasn't been good in the CAA this season, and obviously we continue to talk about this really weird CAA conference this season, but we've seen these two teams play before. They played earlier this year, and Hampton beat them 83-67. Now, I don't know why the rematch is this late in the year. I know, again, Howard has multiple non-conference games late in their schedule, which it is what it is. I don't understand I don't understand their schedule making, because we'll just get to Howard in a second. I'll go over their entire last 5 games that have been abysmal for the Bison. Anyways, for Hampton, I get it. They've lost 3 in a row, but they've lost to some decent teams. Again, I think these teams in the CAA are better than obviously who we see at the MEAC. I think the only team that is somewhat comparable from the MEAC to the CAA is obviously Norfolk State, the Spartans. Everyone else in the MEAC I don't think is very good. I just don't think so. And I think that's apparent by the way that Howard is 3-1, a Howard team that, we'll just talk about it right now. Lost to Norfolk State, obviously, in their last game. Again, the Spartans, I think very highly of. I got to watch them in person this year. I think very highly of Norfolk State. Again, watch out for Brian Moore. He's the player of this conference. He's going to win Player of the Year in this conference, and we'll see. I think Norfolk State might shock a team potentially. They feel like if there's ever going to be a 15 seed upset this year, again, I'm saying this now on February 1st, it's going to be Norfolk State. If there's a 15, 16, I don't think they're going to get a 14. If they do, though, if there's going to be a very low seed, very high seed upset winner this year, it's going to be a team like Norfolk State. Again, we have to see when the bracket comes out. Hopefully they don't get upset in the tournament and we don't send a team, or the MEAC doesn't send a team like, I don't know, Morgan State to the tournament. But I do like Norfolk State a lot this year. So Howard just played them. They lost the game by 17 points. But what happened in the 2 games before that? They lose to 2 D2s. They lose to Bowie State at home. And they lose to Morehouse. I believe Morehouse is the one that's Martin Luther King School, right? Or was it Bowie State? It was Morehouse. They lose back-to-back games to teams that don't even have ESPN pages. Now, they were undefeated in the MEAC prior to that. 3 straight wins over Delaware State, Morgan State, and Copen State, which is odd. But when they play the CAA, they don't win, even though they beat UNC Wilmington, though, which I don't understand. How do they beat that team, of all teams? How do they beat UNC Wilmington? I don't get that one. That one doesn't make sense at all, but they lost to the Drexel Dragons and Hampton. Don't get it. Howard's got some guys who can score. They just don't really play defense, and that's how they lost to those D2 schools, and obviously that's how Brian Moore and Norfolk State tore them up the other night. Blake Harper is going to give you 18.5 a night. You got Marcus Dockery, he's going to give you 17. You get Cameron Shockley Okeke? I think that's how you say his last name. He was averaging 11 points a night. The thing is, they don't play defense at all. Teams are able to score at will against this Howard Bison team, which will be interesting because Hampton isn't the best scoring team, but I would like to say that's more of them just playing really competitive games in the CAA this season because how good the CAA is. Hampton's led by George Beal Jr. is averaging 13 points. Noah Farrakhan is averaging 13 as well. Daniel Johnson's going to give you 8. Kyrese Mullen will give you 8 on a nightly basis. But when we look back at that first game that Hampton and Howard played this year, wasn't really that close of a competition. It was a 16-point victory for the Hampton Pirates in that one. Again, for Howard, Blake Harper did score 34 points in that night. Farrakhan with 17 for Hampton, and also Wayne Bristol Jr., who's averaging 7.5 points, did explode in that game for 18 over 28 minutes. So I think I'm okay with Hampton in the spot. Really, again, the last game that we saw Howard play was all Blake Harper. Blake Harper is the only guy on that team in the starting lineup to score double-digit points. And obviously, again, Harper doesn't come out the game. He played 40 minutes straight in that first Hampton-Howard matchup. And I get it, the game's in DC this time, but I'm not too concerned at all. I'm going to take the Hampton Pirates here. We saw them beat them by 16. It's the same thing we were talking about earlier. Do we really think there's a 17-point swing just because the game's at Howard right now? No. Howard's been playing absolutely horrible. They've lost back-to-back games to D2 schools, and they got mopped up by the best team in their conference in Norfolk State in their last game. I wouldn't expect Howard to beat anybody right now. Now, again, that goes to show how pitiful the rest of the conference is right now in the MEAC, other than, again, Norfolk State, who, again, we think is great. But, like, what are we doing? Like, Morgan State, what are we doing? Delaware State, I know those teams aren't the best, but, like, you gotta beat teams like Howard. What do we... Man, and then there's Maryland Eastern Shore. But that's, I feel bad for them, I really do. But yeah, Brian Moore is the player of the year in the MEAC. It's not even close. And the Hampton Pirates will go on the road to Washington, D.C. and beat the Howard Bison. All right, let's move on to our next game here. And we go to the SWAC. Not the only SWAC game that we're going to be talking about today, because we have a huge matchup in the SWAC. It's everything that we thought, it's not this game, but the other game we have in the SWAC today was everything we thought Washington versus Minnesota was going to be in the Big Ten. We have that version of things in the SWAC coming to you in a couple moments. Actually, that's later in the video. You'll see it though. For now, we've got Prairie View A&M going to Texas Southern to take on the Texas Southern Tigers. This is a blowout. I'm surprised the line is 7.5 here. I'm really surprised we get this line, because I think the Texas Southern Tigers blow this team out the water. I don't think it's a competitive basketball game. Texas Southern has not lost since their first game in SWAC play this season, and that is to the best team in the SWAC, and that is Southern. Southern is really good. Southern went to Texas Southern, and they beat them by 9 points. What has Texas Southern done since? They have won every single game they've played in the SWAC. They've won 6 in a row over the likes of Grambling, Mississippi Valley State on the road, Alcorn State, Jackson State, which is a good victory, on the road Alabama A&M, which is a good victory, and then on the road again against those Alabama State Hornets, winning that game by 11 points in their last one. Prairie View A&M is not very good. They have got 3 wins in the SWAC this season. One is against Grambling at home, team at the same level as them, and then just the 2 bottom feeders in the conference. We're talking about the Delta Devils and Mississippi Valley State and Arkansas Pine Bluff. Both those victories are on the road for Prairie View A&M, but again, Arkansas Pine Bluff and Mississippi Valley State are absolutely pitiful. Trust me, there'll be more on them later in the video. What have the Panthers done since, though, that 2-game winning streak? They have lost to Jackson State, lost to Alcorn State, went to Alabama State and lost, and then in their last one, got blown out at Alabama A&M. A 3-4 in conference team, Alabama A&M. Prairie View goes there. They give up 98 points. They only score 82, again, losing the game by 16. For the Panthers, their best player is by far, they got 2 guys who can score, but Tanaj Petaway has been their guy, averaging 17.5 this season. Nick Anderson, though, has just been out since the Rice loss on December 22nd, so they're without their best scorer. Tanaj Petaway, again, has been, the guy to take over in that role. He's been putting up big numbers. Hell, in the Arkansas Pine Bluff game, he scored 33. The Jackson State loss scored 31, and their last loss on the 27th on Monday, he scored 22 against Alabama A&M. I mean, this is a guy who can attack the paint, and, he can score out, I wouldn't say it will, but he can score, right? Texas Southern just has better scorers, though. Again, a 6-1 team in conference. They've got Kavion McLean, who's going to average 14.5. Zaire Hayes, who averages 10. And Kenny Hunter as well. It's just an all-around better team effort. Again, Prairie View A&M feels like in a lot of spots they get just pretty much reliant on a guy like Petaway. Like Braylon Bush can score too, Marcel Bryant can. But the thing again with Prairie View A&M, like we mentioned earlier with the Howard Bison up in Washington D.C., is that they don't really play defense. Again, their last game, Alabama A&M, not a potent offense or anything, scored 98 points on them. Right, I think Texas Southern should be able to dominate this basketball game. The line is 7.5. Again, I expect this to be a blowout. You look at what Texas Southern has done recently to bad teams. Well, it's kind of hard to really gauge where anyone is in the SWAC, but 11-point victory on the road at Alabama State. A road win against Alabama A&M in overtime by 4 points. I'm not going to be mad at all. Jackson State went at home by 8 points. That's not a bad Jackson State Tigers team at all. Beating Alcorn State at home by 9. Going to Mississippi Valley State, winning the game by 29 points. they are beating, these teams by this margin every single night. And I don't think Prairie View A&M's all that great. And the game, again, is at Texas Southern. So the Texas Southern Tigers, to me, again, feel like the second best team in the SWAC right now. Obviously, number one is Southern by far. Again, Southern is probably again, if we want to talk about, the matchups in the first four, right? We're talking about maybe, I don't know, you might legitimately see Long Island University if they somehow win their conference tournament against Southern. I definitely take Southern to win that basketball game right now. Again, we'll see. That's March. Wait for it. But I do think Texas Southern is the second best team in the conference. I think they're able to outscore Prairie View A&M, and I think they're able to cover this line. So give me the Texas Southern Tigers to win this basketball game and cover 7.5 at home. Take the money line if you want, but yeah, give me Texas Southern to win this game by more than 8 or more and cover the spread, obviously. Okay, let's move on to our next one. We go to the ACC, where we have the Southern Methodist Mustangs hosting the Stanford Cardinal. We are actually staying away for the most part from the SEC today. I don't think we have a single SEC game today. There are very good games in the SEC. Just because I don't talk about them doesn't mean I'm not going to be watching them. I'm super pumped for Auburn and Ole Miss today. I'm going to be watching them probably at the same time as I'm watching UFC. I think Auburn wins. I think they cover 5.5, but I'm not confident in that game, right? It's going to be a fun game to watch. But I think the better value spots today are on small school college basketball. And this one, again, not entirely a small school game. Obviously, you get Southern Methodist and Stanford, but some of the games we're going over again today are smaller school games. So we go to this one again here in Texas. We've got SMU taking on Stanford. I think it's a spot that Stanford can definitely cover. I 100% think it is. They are 5.5-point dogs on the road. I'm not saying they outright win it. If you want to press me on a pick, yeah, I will say Stanford wins. But I think the pick here is plus 5.5 for Stanford. This is not like it's a crazy road trip that we were worried about for Stanford at the beginning of the season. Now, the Cardinal have been fine on long road trips this year. They kind of have. I mean, they've only won one game in the ACC on the road, but it's at Chapel Hill against North Carolina. Now, UNC, the Tar Heels, have choked away a bunch of close games this season. I think Duke's going to blow them out tonight, but it is what it is. That's not one of the 5 best bets because who knows? RJ Davis could come back to haunt us, so I'm not gonna pick that one. I mean, thanks, North Carolina, for your game at Pitt the other night. I think Stanford's able to stay really competitive here against SMU. Hear me out. I really think they are. Maxime Reynaud, again, has been working his way into NBA draft territory this year. I think it's clear to say he's probably going to be a guy that's going to get drafted in the first 60 picks, obviously the only 60 picks, but I do think Reynaud's going to be a guy who's going to get a shot probably on someone's G League roster, obviously the Summer League this offseason. But Stanford now has put together 4 straight victories, right? A win at North Carolina, a win against Miami, a win against Florida State, and then their last game, a win at home against Syracuse. This team has been putting together victories, and they have been winning. Now, they got up to a huge start against Syracuse the other night. They were up 22-2 at one point. Again, that game was a lot closer down the stretch as I think, Syracuse only lost the game by 9 points. However, again, Stanford has been able to score. Stanford has been able to dominate early, and a lot of that has to be credited towards Maxime Reynaud. Now, I didn't think Stanford was going to be all that good to start the year. Again, we would pick against Stanford a lot, but Reynaud's emergence has been great. And again, I always knew Reynaud was good. I didn't know how good the supporting cast around Reynaud was going to be, and obviously with guys like Jalen Blakes, Oziah Sellers, Ryan Argerwal has been decent in spots. Benny Geeler can kind of hit threes sometimes. The supporting cast has been really good around Reynaud this year. They're going to Southern Methodist to take on SMU. Now, the last time we had a best bet spot with SMU, it wasn't great. Not going to hide from it. It was that loss at home against Louisville where the Cardinals went in there and beat them by 25 points. Now, was that Louisville's just elite in the ACC because they are? Or is it just SMU wasn't ready for the moment and SMU can't hang with the best teams? I think it's a combination of both. I think it is, okay? After watching that game and what has transpired since then, again, I think Louisville's really good. I think they have a sneaky good chance. Not really sneaky anymore. I think they have a good chance to win the ACC tournament. I get it. Duke is incredible. They're probably the second best team in the country right now. I think there's a possibility, though, Louisville might be able to shock them, obviously, in the ACC tourney, where both teams have obviously already punched their ticket to the NCAA tournament. Regardless, for SMU in this spot, or since the Louisville game, they have won back-to-back in Raleigh against North Carolina State and then against Cal. Two somewhat close games, but again, SMU is able to pull them together. We just got to look at their wins, though. And the ACC, there's so many teams in this damn conference, and there's a lot of, unfortunately, bad teams in the ACC as well. I mean, hell, you look right at the Miami Hurricanes. I mean, what are we doing? That team's absolutely pitiful. SMU beat them, obviously, on the road by 40-something points, but that's just how bad Miami is. A win at Virginia by 2 points. It's a good win, I guess. It's not all that impressive, though. Like, in hindsight, a lot of these victories aren't that great. The Georgia Tech win, Georgia Tech's not that good. Boston College, horrible this season. Virginia at home, not that good. I do think Stanford, again, SMU, they've played good teams. So every time SMU has played a middle of the pack or good team in the ACC this year, they've lost. Louisville, North Carolina, middle of the pack team, they went to Chapel Hill and lost, something Stanford didn't do. They lose at home against Duke, right? I mean, those are the three losses in the conference, but all their wins, I'll be honest, are against kind of bottom feeders. Virginia, Boston College, Virginia, Georgia Tech, Miami, NC State. The one middle of the pack team I would say is Cal, but I don't think the Golden Bears really adapt to the travel schedule as well as Stanford does, if I'm being honest. And sure, that might be somewhat of an excuse. I get that, but I think Stanford's a better team than Cal, obviously. We saw that game this season. The Stanford Cardinal were able to beat California in Berkeley by 8 points. So, again, Stanford's on a run right now. This team has won 6 out of their last 7 games, and trust me, this is coming from someone who has been a, I guess, Stanford Cardinal hater this season. I thought this team was going to be horrible this year. I mean, hell, I watched them play Norfolk State. Norfolk State should have won that basketball game, by the way. They barely got by against Santa Clara earlier this year. They lost to Cal Poly, which was horrible. They lost to GCU. Again, I didn't think Stanford was the best, but they have really shown out in ACC play, and that's really because of Maxime Reynaud, who's posted a double-double in every ACC game he has played this season other than the Cal win and the Pitt loss on the road. And again, this is not an Atlantic Coast game. SMU is just another one of these teams that just got added to the ACC. They play in Texas. They play, I mean, what coast are they on? The Gulf of America? This is not an Atlantic Coast game. It's a fairly, a 3.5, 4 probably hour plane ride for Stanford? No, probably 3.5. I haven't been to Dallas in like a year, so I don't really remember, but year and a half. But I'm going to take Stanford to go into SMU and win this basketball game. Again, though, the play here, though, is plus 5.5 for the Cardinal. I don't mind the money line for Stanford. I think they have the potential to do it, but I don't think SMU should be that many points favorites at home against the Stanford Cardinals. So give me Stanford plus 5.5 on the road here at Southern Methodist. We move on to our next one. Again, this is everything we thought that Minnesota versus Washington was going to be in the Big Ten, and now here it is in the form of the SWAC. What a ball game. It is Arkansas Pine Bluff at home at 3:30 in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, hosting the Mississippi Valley State Delta Devils. The 2-18 MVSU Delta Devils taking on the 3-17 Arkansas Pine Bluff Golden Lions. This is the worst matchup, I believe, right now in college basketball. The Delta Devils are ranked the worst team in college basketball. I need to find, here we go. Yes, it is the number 364th team in the net rankings. That is the Delta Devils, taking on the number 363 team in the net rankings. That is Arkansas Pine Bluff. So here are the stakes for this basketball game, guys. We want to talk about the toilet bowl. We want to talk about, relegation games in other sports. Obviously, there's no relegation going on in this game, but this is it, man. These are the 2 worst teams in college basketball, and we get the honor of watching it tonight. I mean, this is big time, man. It doesn't get worse than this. Mississippi Valley State 2-19 this season. Their only wins are over, one was a win over a school for women, the Mississippi University for women. I get their guys that go to that school. But they beat up a women's college, and they beat Oakwood. Those are their only wins this season. Arkansas Pine Bluff, their victories are against Champion Christian University. Somehow Central Arkansas is horrible, and they lost that basketball game. You're a disgrace. They're coming off a win over West Georgia somehow, some way. Interesting. And then a win over Ecclesia University December 17th. Arkansas Pine Bluff has lost every single game they've played in the SWAC this season. A 10-point loss at Alabama A&M, a 2-point loss at Alabama State, a 11-point loss at home against Prairie View A&M, who we talked about earlier being another one of those bad teams in the SWAC. Obviously not this level of bad. A 10-point loss at Florida A&M, a team that's been pretty bad recently, but they still lose by 10. Bethune-Cookman beats Arkansas Pine Bluff by 9. Southern obviously beats them by 17 points. And then Grambling just beat Arkansas Pine Bluff in Arkansas by 4 points. Now, it does get tricky when you talk about the Delta Devils. My goodness, these scores are absolutely horrible. I'm going to give you the rationale for the pick in a minute, but here are the Delta Devils results. Since winning their last game on December 2nd, where they beat Oakwood, they lost 89-52 against Liberty, 83-42 against North Texas, 93-48 against Tulsa, 110-45 against LSU, 84-55 against Alabama State. Oh my goodness. 79-67 loss against Alabama A&M, a 74-65 loss against Prairie View A&M, an 82-53 loss at Texas Southern. 83-58 loss against Bethune-Cookman, an 83-53 loss against Florida A&M, a 11-point loss to Grambling, and a 21-point loss to Southern. Have they lost a game by single digits this year? Oh my goodness, they haven't. Well, we're going to be asking the Delta Devils to do something they haven't done all year long, and that's to lose by single digits. Now, actually, hey, they can lose the game by 12 points and we still win. So, there's that. But this is what we got going on today. Mississippi Valley State, the Delta Devils, this is their only chance to win a basketball game this season other than when they play Arkansas Pine Bluff on March 1st in Mississippi. But this is the time for the Delta Devils to go on the road and take care of business and cover 12.5 points. I'm not asking them to win. Not asking them to win at all. Again, guys, by far the Golden Lions are the better basketball team. They've played competitive games in the SWAC. We talk about, again, MVSU getting blown out in every game they play. Again, Arkansas Pine Bluff lost by 4 points to Grambling. They lost by 2 to Alabama State. Hell, I'll give them a 10-point loss at Alabama A&M and Florida A&M. I get that. But I do think MVSU is able to stay in this game. Guys, this team's got to be pumped up. They got to be. Got to be pumped up. They know this is their only chance to win this year. This is one of their 2 shots. And we're just actually asking them to keep the game close. All we're asking. That is all we are asking. They need to stop Dr. Bradley, who is a shot taker. This guy's going to take 1 million shots a game for Arkansas Pine Bluff. This is a guy who was at New Mexico State a couple seasons ago. He puts up a bunch of shots. He plays basically the entire game for Arkansas Pine Bluff. Now, the Delta Devils really don't have anybody like that, if I'm being honest. Christian Moore is the other main scorer for the Golden Lions. For MVSU, they got to rely on Arthur Tate, who's averaging 11 points a night. Alvin Stredich, who's averaging 10. Donovan Sanders is averaging 8.5. And then after that, everyone else averages less than 5 points a game. Oh my God. Why am I doing this? Yeah, give me the Delta Devils. I'll be honest with you guys. This is my, out of the best bet, say this is number 10. I'll just be completely honest. Completely honest with you guys. I kind of want an excuse to talk about this basketball game. I still like MVSU. I think 12.5 is a lot. Not for Mississippi Valley State, but for Arkansas Pine Bluff to finally break through and actually win a game, yeah, 12.5 is a lot of points for them. For Mississippi Valley State, obviously, they are used to losing by that many points. But, again, can Arkansas Pine Bluff, in a game that you're expected to win, you haven't been favorites all year long, and now you're 12.5 point favorites at home? Maybe they start to piss down the leg a little bit. I don't know. Again, I expect Arkansas Pine Bluff is minus 1,000 favorites to win this basketball game. All I'm asking is that the Delta Devils cover the line, plus 12.5. Let's go. They're the worst team in college basketball. I got to see them last year when they came to Santa Clara. They scored 39 points in that basketball game. They lost at 81-39. Let's go MVSU on the road, 12.5 points. Just got to cover. Let's go Delta Devils. Next up, we go to the Big East. So enough of these, small school games. We've got 3 huge basketball games to end the night. 3 of the ones I'm looking forward to the most. We're going to start off here, though, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, with Marquette hosting Yukon, 2 ranked teams in the Big East. Marquette ranked 9th in the country, taking on the number 25 ranked Yukon Huskies. I'm taking Yukon to cover this line. Okay, 7.5 points. Don't care who wins. I think Yukon's got the capability of winning this game. I expect Marquette to win it, but we've picked Yukon quite a bit this season, and we are going to continue to do it here tonight. Yukon is 7-3, I believe, in conference. Yes, 7-3 in the Big East this season. Marquette is 9-1, with the Golden Eagles, of course, only loss being that home loss against Xavier, where Marquette just couldn't get it going on offense that game. They scored 57 points. Again, the Musketeers of Xavier were able to win it 59-57. Since then, Marquette has won 3 in a row. A big win on the road against, it's not really that big of a win, but a win on the road against Seton Hall, a win over Villanova, where they covered, obviously, this game we took, and then a win on the road in Indianapolis over the Butler Bulldogs. For the Yukon Huskies, it has been a mixed bag of results, to say the least. They started off Big East play hot. We were talking about, hey, Yukon, they take them out of Maui, they're great. They kept on winning games, right? They take them out of Maui, they beat Baylor. They go to Austin, they beat Texas. They beat Zaga. They come back to Big East play, they beat Xavier. They go to Butler, they go to DePaul, they beat Providence. Then they go to Villanova in a game where Alex Caravan absolutely choked, can't make a damn free throw, and they lose that game. Then they go to Georgetown and win. Then they host Creighton, lose, beat Butler, go to Xavier and Cincinnati and lose, and they're coming off a win, obviously, over DePaul, who is still horrible. I think Marquette wins, but I do feel like this point total is too much. I do think it is. 7.5 is a lot. Yukon has not lost a game in the Big East so far this season by that many points, and I get it. Marquette's probably the best team in the conference. Maybe if you want to give St. John's a look as the best team in the conference, one of those two. But yes, we'll just, for all intents and purposes for this video, we're going to say Marquette's the best team in the Big East. I get that. But Yukon hasn't lost a game by more than 8 points all year except for once, right? The Dayton loss, where Dan Hurley and company, they were just sick of being in Maui. They just kind of gave up in that game, after the first 5 minutes once they fell behind Dayton. That's the only time Yukon all year long has lost by more than 7.5 points. And Marquette hasn't really been blowing the doors off anyone. I get, again, that was like the counterpoint to my rationale of them beating Villanova. I like that matchup-wise. And sure, again, I'm going to contradict myself from when I was talking about that Nova game, but Marquette does play some competitive games at home. And again, the reason why I like them over Villanova, I just thought it was the matchup. I thought, again, Marquette was kind of due for a big one coming off the momentum of the Seton Hall victory, and obviously that's what happened. Nova hasn't been great in some of those spots on the road this season, but the thing about Yukon is they haven't been horrible on the road this year. They just haven't, right? I mean, 2 losses on the road this year are at Nova, at Xavier, but both those losses are a 2 and 4 point loss. And I get it. Again, Marquette's probably the best team they're going to see this year in conference. I mean, hell, they've got a big game next week at home against St. John's in a game where Yukon might be favored to win. I don't know. I'm just saying right now, we're probably going to take Yukon to win that game. I don't know if I just put too much trust in Dan Hurley to actually win basketball games with Yukon being back-to-back national champions. But if you get Yukon in a spot where they're dogs, you usually take them. I'm just going to be honest. You just take them. It's about picking the elite coaches in the sport, the elite dynasties in the sport, the elite schools in the sport, and that's what the Yukon Huskies absolutely are. Now, I don't think their team's as good as past years, obviously. We're talking about guys like Alex Caravan, who has been very up and down this season, solo ball, Liam McNeely, who is a future NBA player, obviously, like Caravan. But, I mean, McNeely has been out since January 1st. That's been something that's been obviously hindering the Huskies as well. For the Golden Eagles, they're led by Cam Jones. Jones can score. David Joplin can score as well. Stevie Mitchell, I mean, Chase Ross. They've got a lot of scorers on this Marquette team. And ultimately, again, that's why I think the Golden Eagles win the basketball game. I think Yukon has potential to win, but again, if I had to bet my life savings on it, yeah, I'm going to take the top 10 team in Marquette to win this game at home. But I think Yukon, again, has potential to do it, and I just don't think Marquette's able to get away from Yukon by that many points. Again, 7.5 is a lot, and Yukon's covered this line every single game they played this season except for one, and in the Big East as well. They've lost twice, or 3 times, but those losses have all been very close. And Marquette, again, yes, Marquette, look good against Nova at home. They blew them out. They've covered this line in their last 3, but they haven't played a team like Yukon. I think we're underrating Yukon a little bit. Yes, they've had some trouble this year. I understand that. But in big games, I do think Yukon gets up for this one. I think Yukon keeps it close. Again, I don't think they win it. And ultimately, for these teams, they don't care about the spread, obviously. They're playing for the victory. I don't think Yukon gets that. But I think Yukon is competitive in this game. This is one that's going to go somewhat to the wire. And I do think Yukon's able to hold close to the Marquette Golden Eagles. I'm taking Yukon on the road to cover the 7.5 points. But ultimately, yes, we are going with the Golden Eagles of Marquette to win the game outright. I think it should be a fun one. And it starts the first of 3. Yeah, they're not consecutive games. But there's 3 really fun games at the end of the night after you get done watching Mississippi Valley State take on Arkansas Pine Bluff. You get this game, and then you get this one out the Mountain West. It's a huge spot. It's the game of the day for me, and I know the next game we're talking about is going to be absolutely crucial as well in the West Coast Conference, but this is massive in the Mountain West. Utah State, 19-2 this season, 9-1 in the Mountain West, taking on New Mexico, the Lobos, who are 9-1 in the Mountain West this season and 17-4 in conference. You can't write a better basketball game than this one right here. Again, I think both these teams are going to be in the tournament. I think New Mexico, their loss at San Jose State does hurt them a lot for an at-large bid, but I'd be very surprised if New Mexico, unless they have a complete meltdown towards the end of the season, I don't think they're not going to be in the NCAA tournament. I think really, as you look down the stretch this season, I think the only games that they could potentially lose, again, I'm talking potentially, I don't think they're going to lose all these games, obviously. I think very highly of the Lobos, as you're going to hear in a second, but I think the only games that they potentially could lose are the Utah State 2 games, SDSU on the road, Boise on the road. I think they'll get Nevada. I think they will. We just saw New Mexico go on the road and beat UNLV. That's an impressive victory, man. The Lobos find ways to win. This is a very incredible team, very impressive team, and I'm blown away by Donovan Dent. Just damn. Guys, when you need a bucket, they put the ball in that man's hands, and most of the time he's going to go out there and get you that bucket. Donovan Dent's a baller. He averages 20 points a game, and Nelly Jr. Joseph is spectacular as well. Nelly Jr. Joseph averages 14 points a game, 10.5 rebounds a game. He's a great shot blocker. He's a great interior force. The reason why New Mexico lost that game to San Jose State a couple weeks ago was because Nelly Jr. Joseph got into foul trouble, and then they had to rely on Atiki Aliatiki, who really isn't ready for prime time just yet, I'll be honest with you. But that's just how good and how much of a presence and how much of a force Nelly Jr. Joseph is for the New Mexico Lobos. And again, Donovan Dent, an absolute monster as well. There's a stat this season as well. In games that True Washington has scored more than 10 points in, New Mexico has won every single one of them. I mean, hell, you look at their last loss, he scored 6 against San Jose State. That was the game, obviously, where Latrell Davis hit the game winner for the San Jose State Spartans. But again, True Washington, with 6 points in that game, they lost it. The other loss is 8 points against New Mexico State, lost 2 points against Arizona State, lost 9 points against St. John's, who we didn't know was going to be this good, lost. So, in games that True Washington, who's really their fourth option, if I'm being honest, Mustafa Amzil has been really bad recently. I mean, he's very off and on. The three-point shot's not hitting like it was at the beginning of the season. So maybe you can say True Washington right now is their third option. But again, this team is all centered around Donovan Dent and Nelly Jr. Joseph. Obviously, Jr. Joseph had the big game winner at the 1,000th game at the Pit this season, obviously with that floater from the free throw line that won against the Nevada Wolfpack. And again, Utah State's really good, though. And I get it. Utah State's really good. They've lost one game in conference this year. It's a loss on the road at UNLV. Tough place to go and play. Obviously, New Mexico just passed that test, but I understand, again, that's a tough place to go play, and, Utah State loses the game by 3 points. The other loss this season is against a very good UCSD team, obviously UC San Diego, a team that I don't think they're going to be making that, I don't think they're going to be getting a at-large spot. I just don't think so, with their second loss in the Big West being at that absolute cesspool in UC Riverside. I will give UCR a lot of credit. They are playing much better than I thought they were going to be. Shout out Burlington Hargris. But I don't think UCSD can get that at large. UCI, though, they might be able to. I think UCI wins the Big West. They haven't been playing their best ball recently, but UCI is still 19-3, 9-1. Shout out Bent Lupton and the guys. A big UCI guy this year. Potentially, if UCSD is able to win the Big West, maybe UCI does get that at large. I think they should. I think I would put UCI at a 10 seed right now, personally. That's where they should be. I think they could beat a lot of teams in the state of California. I really think so. I think they'd beat every team in the state of California except for UCLA. I think they'd have a competitive game with Stanford. They'd probably lose. I think they'd be very competitive against San Diego State. They'd beat Cal. I think right now they'd beat USC, depending on where you play that game. And they beat Santa Clara. They wouldn't beat St. Mary's. St. Mary's is good. Other than that, yeah, I think UCI beats a lot of teams in the state. Just saying. Anyways, depends where the games are played, obviously. But UC San Diego, the second best team in the Big West, is one of those losses for Utah State. Again, a loss at home for Utah State in that one, but they've looked great ever since. Here's where I think New Mexico wins the game. The pick is the New Mexico Lobos, because we take them in pretty much every single game we get for New Mexico. If you couldn't tell, again, I like New Mexico a lot. I have teams in college basketball I just really like a lot. New Mexico's one of them. Hell, UCI is another one of those teams. Like, these are the teams that I pick a lot. UCLA is starting to be on that level, too. A shout out to Adai Mara. Tyler Bilodeau's back. Oh, my goodness. UCLA is going to be good this year. I'm just saying. They're going to go. They're going to make a run in the tournament. This is the year UCLA makes a run. Anyways, for Utah State, Led by Ian Martinez, Mason Falsev, both those guys averaging around 17 points a game. But here's where New Mexico wins. It's with their scoring. The Lobos will be able to outscore Utah State. I believe so. Again, you look at when New Mexico's on, man, they can score points. And they don't play horrible defense either. I really think New Mexico puts it on Utah State. I think this is a high-scoring game. I think the winner of this game will be in the 90s. But I think New Mexico goes into Utah to the D. Glenn Smith Spectrum Auditorium. I think that's what it's called. I think Spectrum Center, potentially. D. Glenn Smith Spectrum. And they win the game in Logan, Utah. They're 4.5-point dogs. I absolutely love Donovan Dent. I like what Nelly Jr. Joseph does as well. And we're taking the New Mexico Lobos on the road in Logan, Utah to beat Utah State. I get it's a tough spot. I just think New Mexico right now is the better basketball team. I think Donovan Dent scores 30+, and I think New Mexico does it. It's going to take that type of effort, but it's going to be the biggest win for New Mexico basketball in a very long time. If they lose, they're still going to be fine. They'll still get that large, but if they win, New Mexico, then we look at, this is a potential, 9 seed in the tournament, because right now they're hovering like 11, 10-ish. This is a 9 seed in the tournament, potentially maybe an 8 seed if they are able to go to Logan, Utah and win. This is a huge game for this program. It is for Utah State too, but obviously New Mexico is more to win and less to lose, honestly, in this spot. So give me the New Mexico Lobos. They're going to be playing free. Patino is going to have those guys going, and give me the New Mexico Lobos on the road to cover the 4.5 points and beat Utah State outright. We go on to our final game of the night. It's a big one in Moraga. We've got the St. Mary's Gales at 8 p.m. hosting Gonzaga, obviously in the West Coast Conference. I'm very surprised St. Mary's are underdogs in this game. With that being said, we're taking the undefeated West Coast Conference team in the St. Mary's Gales. They are 19-3 this season. They lost 3 non-conference games to Arizona State, to Boise State, and to Utah State, who we just talked about. But this team has been excellent in the West Coast Conference. In that last game that they played at Santa Clara University, I am sold. Absolutely sold. They won a 30-0 run in that basketball game. 30-0. When St. Mary's decides you aren't going to score, you are not going to score. When this team decides to lock in defensively, put the clamps on you, my goodness, it is trouble. And that's what St. Mary's did to Santa Clara the other night. I think it was Wednesday night at the Levy Center. A 67-54 victory for St. Mary's. This team plays some of the best defense in the country. 41 points. That was how many Pepperdine scored against them earlier in this year. They played them again in Malibu. Pepperdine scored 50. USF, not a bad team. San Francisco scores 51 points on them. Earlier this season, they played USC. How many points did the Trojans score? 36. That's a Big Ten school. Nah, when St. Mary's decides you aren't going to score, you do not score. They're not going to blow you away scoring, I'm not going to lie. I mean, Augustus Marcelonis averages 13.5. Paulius Muscaras, probably butcher the hell out of that, averages 13. Luke Barrett averages 10.5. Mitchell Saxon averages 10.5. Jordan Ross averages 9. This team's not going to outgun you. If this game is a shootout, I can tell you right now, St. Mary's won't win. It's not going to be a shootout, though. They are going to have Gonzaga in hell in this game. We've seen Gonzaga struggle this year on the road. They went to Corvallis and lost in overtime. This team's not unbeatable this season. They're not like some of the Zaga teams of past where they're stomping everyone in the West Coast Conference. No, it's not that way this season. They've got good players. Graham Ike's good. Cleve Battle's good. You know what Ryan Nembhard can do. I think he leads college basketball in assists. Braden Huff's not bad. Nolan Hickman can play too. There's a bunch of players on this team. Ben Gregg. Yeah, Gonzaga's got guys. But here's the thing. You can have as many players as you want, as many scorers as you want. But when you take on one of the best defensive teams in all of college basketball, how do you respond? And when you got to go to their place, Zaga's got to come down from Spokane, down to Moraga, a place that St. Mary's has not lost all year long, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, they hosted Utah State and lost that game. We did pick Utah State in that spot. I want to make that very clear. But St. Mary's lost one time this year at home. It's Utah State. Just talked about how good Utah State is. I get it. Zaga's really good too. But again, Gonzaga now unranked. They've got 6 losses this season. Obviously, 2 now in West Coast play with the loss in Corvallis against Oregon State and that loss against Santa Clara at home right after. Sure, they bounced back. They've won 2 in a row. They beat Portland, and we weren't on the right side of that equation when they hosted Oregon State on Tuesday, but that's okay. St. Mary's will take care of business for us because St. Mary's will have Zaga in hell. Gonzaga's not going to be able to score. St. Mary's will lock this team down, and that's entirely what the pick is. St. Mary's, the Gales defense will win this game for us, and St. Mary's at home will take care of business. I am surprised they are underdogs. Again, you can have all these scores that you want in Gonzaga, all these high recruit players, all these great players, Ike, Nembhard, Battle, Hickman. Doesn't matter when you take on the defense of a team like St. Mary's. And again, this is the biggest game that gets played in Moraga all year long. It's, again, St. Mary's has been that one team in this West Coast Conference for years that has been the number one threat to Gonzaga. It's always been St. Mary's. Well, here you go. This is now the year, well, hey, St. Mary's might be better than this team. It's always, oh, can St. Mary's catch up? Can St. Mary's steal one at home? No, now it's, all right, St. Mary's is trying to solidify that they are just the better basketball team. So give me the St. Mary's Gales at home to win against Gonzaga. Don't care about the spread. St. Mary's money line at home against the Gonzaga Bulldogs, handing Zaga their third loss, in the span of the last 2 weeks in the West Coast Conference. So folks, thank you all for watching our 10 best bets for college basketball here on February 1st. If you have not yet though, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy the video, and make sure to comment if you do disagree with any of the picks. We'll be back tomorrow for more college basketball best bets. Make sure to join us for NBA predictions later today as well in 3 hours. Folks, thank you all for watching, and Mamba